The chaos god Tzeentch, also known as the Changer of Ways, is the deity of change, evolution, secrets, and sorcery. He weaves the threads that connect every action, conspiracy, and secret intrigue within the galactic game of manipulation and deceit. Each of these threads extends towards the human soul, entangled and transformed into a puppet. All these servants and agents believe they serve the Lord of Sorcery on mutually beneficial terms. The truth is that every action by Tzeentch is calculated to achieve an obscure intermediate goal, to affirm his supremacy among the forces of chaos. The very nature of the Lord of Entropy is such that even should he succeed in this, he would still strive for disorder and change. If one could put it this way, he is the most chaotic and elusive of the dark gods. He is the god of fate, plots and schemes, the embodiment of the ever-changing nature of the warp. Nonetheless, Tzeentch does not aim to achieve any ultimate goal, at least not one that can be comprehended. It seems intrigues are purely an end in themselves for him. His plotting is endless because he doesn't wish for the changes to cease. Tzeentch can never achieve any goal, because doing so would signify the culmination of the Master of Fate's ambition and consequently the end of his existence. He constantly concocts conspiracies, and sometimes his schemes collapse under their own complexity. At the same time, he is the god of knowledge and understanding, and among his followers there might be those who seek a deeper comprehension of the universe, a universe that often seems quite enigmatic. Tzeentch is one of the four major gods of chaos. His spheres of influence include sorcery, intrigue, change, and knowledge. He is known throughout the galaxy by a countless myriad of names and titles. Among them are the Weaver of Destinies, the Great Conspirator and the Architect of Fate, the Great Mutator and the Master of Fortune, along with names such as Cha, Tzeentch, Chen, and others. For each name by which the deceiver is known, he has 1,000 forms and legends. Everything associated with the Lord of Change is in flux, transforming, evolving, and subjected to a vast array of metamorphoses. One could go mad attempting to trace even the shortest threads of the Great Conspirator's plan. And for many, that is precisely what happens. And it is all the more impossible to describe this plan and distill it into a single form, a single scheme, a single motive, one truth. Perhaps the best way to characterize Tzeentch is not to describe him at all, for as time passes, he becomes less like himself than any other being. For Tzeentch, it is enough simply to devise plans and weave into them the fates of mortals with their brief lives. In his mind he hears the hopes of every living being from every planet in the universe. He watches over the plans of his playthings, how they manifest in histories, and plays with them, granting either fortune or fatal misfortune, both for the embodiment of his incomprehensible designs and just for amusement. Tzeentch is sustained by the thirst for change and the recognition of its necessity, as these are inseparable aspects of life throughout the universe. Everyone dreams of prosperity and freedom. These dreams are not exclusive to the impoverished or the powerless. Even the imperial governors of planets and admirals of the imperial fleet fantasize about wealth and prosperity. Some of them may even dream of freeing themselves from their duty to the emperor. All these dreams create a powerful impulse for change, and the ambitions of nations give rise to a force capable of challenging history. Tzeentch embodies the mortal aspiration for variability and change, for evolution and manipulation. This spirit is present in every living being, from the first cell division in the womb to the all-consuming will to survive. In the hearts of those whose desire to overcome eclipses all else, Tzeentch whispers cunning promises. To those who refuse to accept death and oblivion as inevitable, he offers eternal life. Tzeentch's sacred number is 9. His colors are typically seen as blue and gold. However, one can also speak of the continual iridescent shifts, given that he is the master of change. He was the second of the Chaos gods to become self-aware in the Warp, an event that took place in the epoch known in history of Old Earth as the Middle Ages, in the midst of the second millennium. His birth marked the formation of human nations and politics, with all its clandestine intrigues and double standards. Tzeentch is not content with merely observing the fulfillment or collapse of his schemes over time. He has his own plans, schemes that are so complex and intricately intertwined that they touch upon the life of every living being, whether they are aware of it or not. His masterful understanding of time, history, and intrigue allows his machinations to seamlessly interweave, forming a web of causality that spans entire star systems. He derives immense pleasure when others orchestrate personal or political conspiracies and approves the triumph of cunning over brute force. When an inner voice speaks in a person's mind, when the desperate whisper prayers in the night, the architect of fate listens. He perceives every event and intention, and from this information his mighty mind can understand how each will impact the future. The interlocking grid of probability, hopes and changes is the bread and milk of Tzeentch, without which he would ultimately perish. Perhaps the architect of fate is devising plans to overthrow the rest of the chaos gods, or to spread his dominion over all the realms of mortals. Even Tzeentch himself might not be able to say for sure. Whatever his ultimate goal may be, he aims to achieve it by manipulating the lives of men and Xenos. Offering the power of knowledge and sorcery, he can draw influential commanders and sorcerers to his cause, thereby involving the lives of many others. Only a few of Tzeentch's plans are simple. Some, due to their complexity, unfold over epochs. Many seem to contradict each other or directly conflict with his own interests. Only Tzeentch can perceive the threads of possible futures, intertwining through time like entangled skeins of multicolored cords woven from decisions, coincidences, and happenstances. Tzeentch is the master of magic, and his dominion in this realm is undisputed. Sorcery is one of the most potent forces of change, and those who resort to it possess the strongest ambitions and a deeper thirst for power than all others. The raw psychic energy that feeds the psyches of the realm of mortals is the actual fabric of the realm of chaos, the same fabric that constitutes the forces of chaos, their demon servants, and the disembodied human souls that flicker in the warp, which humanity calls spirits. The use of psychic power, or magic, as it is rightly named, is considered an expression of the highest faith among the followers of Tzeentch, who can reap substantial benefits from his patronage. It will likely cost each of them their immortal soul. However, as long as they live, they shall possess unlimited power. They present a stark contrast to the unfortunate psyches of the Imperium of Man, who are engulfed on the black ships of the Inquisition and delivered to terror. There, many of them will feed the insatiable hunger of the dying Emperor, giving him their psychic energy and burning out under his unfeeling gaze. In the eyes of Tzeentch, mortal beings are hopelessly mired in ambiguity. They obscurely wage their personal wars, completely oblivious to the countless contradictions within their own souls. Tzeentch cannot deny himself the pleasure of frolicking in their realm. Some within the Inquisition believe that it is the great conspirator who is responsible for the rapid increase in the number of psychically gifted individuals observed over the last millennium. Tzeentch's need to manipulate and control, along with his desire to increase his own power in the warp, prompts him to forever play the great game, the confrontation of his brothers, the gods of chaos. The other dark gods tend to influence mortals more directly: Khorne through bloodshed and slaughter, Nurgle through disease and decay, Slaanesh through the lure of ecstasy and depravity. Tzeentch and his servants, be they humans, Xenos or demons, craft their schemes and conspiracies quietly and inconspicuously, so their ruses can influence mortals and direct them through machinations. The changer of ways prefers the subtle weapon. Words of flattery, seductive temptations, healthy ambitions pursued through treacherous or immoral means, and above all, conspiracies within conspiracies ad infinitum. While the appearance of the other dark gods remains almost unchanged at all times, Tzeentch presents himself in a multitude of forms. However, over ages, certain traits in his appearance have been identified, reflected in the depictions, material embodiments of his demonic followers, and the nightmares that invade the minds of sleeping humans. In such descriptions, Tzeentch often appears as a gaunt, lanky sorcerer of either male or female gender, whose garments constantly change color. Tzeentch's head is lowered below the shoulders, its arms long and thin. Some witnesses claim that Tzeentch's skin is covered in faces and mouths that whisper mysterious or terrifying things, immediately explaining or refuting the words spoken by the mouth of the creature that is in a place normal for living beings. These faces and mouths covering the demonic entity move across its unholy flesh, surfacing and then disappearing into it as if into water. However, several demon hunters from the Ordo Malleus understand that no pattern can be discerned in this, much like in most things related to the Great Deceiver. All of it might just be some manner of trickery. And even if there were a pattern, it's likely just an intrinsic part of a scheme to elicit trust and make the associated falsehood all the more convincing. Though many describe Tzeentch in this manner, some depict the dark god as a cloud of multicolored smoke or crackling energy of an unknown type, under the influence of which objects burn or transform. Also mentioned are faces in the mist, a writhing mass of fleshy protoplasm, burning runes hanging in space, or merely a whisper, as if the very air itself whispers. Sometimes all of the above are listed in a single observation. Some mention grotesque birds, fish, or twisted hybrids of both, which swim in the air or the depths of water. Birds and fish often feature in descriptions of Tzeentch. Traits inherent to them are common among many of his demons and mortal followers who have undergone mutation. For instance, the most powerful followers of Tzeentch, the greater demons known as Lords of Change, resemble giant humanoid birds. The screamers and discs which carry his champions into battle often appear as flying rays, tirelessly hunting in the great ocean of the immaterium, or the aerial ocean of material worlds, reminiscent of the legendary Carcharodons of Terra. Some suggest that Tzeentch, the great mutator, doesn't have a fixed form at all. Tzeentch's material form, when he decides to manifest physically, represents a mass of constantly changing flesh. Thus, the ever-changing material body of the Changer of Ways is akin to most of his creations, including his demons and his realm itself, which also lack a stable form. There's also a belief that the physical forms of Tzeentch are merely images spawned by the minds of mortals in an attempt to perceive and understand something abstract, something that by its mere presence induces change. It is more akin to a metaphor than a tangible form and might be more fitting for this entity from the ruinous powers than flesh or metal. If such a line of reasoning is permissible, then perhaps it is the constant motion of birds and fish that binds mortal consciousness to Tzeentch. For both species are perpetually in movement. Wind, tides, fluctuations, and the movement of living beings and objects result in changes in temperature and transparency. Therefore, creatures dwelling within these realms are fitting symbols of the Changer of Ways. However, this too is but guesses and suppositions, as is most everything concerning the Great Schemer. Attempting to grasp the true form of the Master of Mutation is tantamount to embracing madness. Since any description of Tzeentch is doomed to be inaccurate and can itself be a manipulation by the Great Deceiver, it follows that the most accurate descriptions of the Changer of Ways must acknowledge their own imprecision. Any attempt to fix the appearance of this embodiment of destructive forces in words, images, or ideas, regardless of the purpose, scientific, tactical, selfish, or unholy, will fail. Even if a mortal mind had the capacity to instantly perceive, comprehend and convey the true nature of Tzeentch, in the next moment, this nature would change, rendering the comprehension obsolete. Whatever the purpose may serve, loyalty to the Emperor of Mankind, plans of the Xenos races, or exploration of the path of chaos for scientific or dark purposes, it can only be done based on the essence of the Architect of Fate, as an image flickering on the periphery of consciousness. Even those who willingly surrender to the wind of change spawned by Tzeentch will never be able to see the true face of the Chaos God, who wears 1,000 masks. The followers of Tzeentch are not as numerous as those dedicated to, say, Khorne. However, he firmly and confidently controls the bodies and minds of mortals. In fact, far more mortals serve him than is known, and his intrigues and multitude of names often hide the true scale of events. Mortal devotees of Tzeentch are typically sorcerers, psychers, scientists, and other educated elites who desire greater knowledge and power. Some of them become quite powerful sorcerers, yet Tzeentch tends to alter the appearance of his followers. This is likely why they find it difficult to reach the pinnacles of power, as they often turn into mindless beasts known as Chaos Spawn, before they manage to unlock the great mysteries offered by the Lord of Change. However, some attain high ranks, continuing to serve Tzeentch, and become extremely dangerous opponents, mighty chaos sorcerers or great warriors. While Khorne despises and forbids sorcery and intrigues in all forms, Tzeentch holds no such reservations about the use and manipulation of brute force if it captures his imagination. Thus, among the followers of Khorne, there are neither sorcerers nor psykers, whereas Tzeentch recruits armies of warriors from all strata of society. Anyone aspiring to significantly change themselves or their environment might find themselves under the watchful gaze of the Changer of Ways. Those who delve into arcane knowledge, wield psychic powers, practice the art of sorcery, or otherwise harness the forces of the Immaterium without the sanction of the relevant imperial authorities are their favored prey for the Architect of Fate. He tempts them, seeking to lead them astray from the true path. Imperial scholars have determined that the frequency of psychic mutations among humans is increasing with each generation, implying that the risk Tzeentch poses to humanity grows proportionately. Thus, organizations such as the Inquisition, the Adeptus Astra Telepathica, the Adeptus Astronomica, and the Scholastia Psychana must always remain vigilant and pursue anyone marked by the influence of chaos with utmost severity. There are numerous checks and restrictions intended to prevent the influence of warp entities on the minds of Imperial psychers. However, any security system is prone to failure, just as the people who uphold it can err in judgment and themselves succumb to temptations and dark influences. Therefore, even with these protective measures in place, Imperial commissars strictly follow the order to execute sanctioned psychers at the first sign of possession or demonic influence. The Traitor Legion of the Thousand Suns serves Tzeentch exclusively. They were once the 15th Legion of Space Marines, founded on Terra at the end of the 30th millennium to reclaim the stars for humanity. For a time they fought valiantly and were little different from other Space Marine legions. However, soon after the Great Crusade, changes began to occur within the Legionnaires. Many exhibited psychic abilities. Other battle brothers underwent flesh change, developing physical mutations rapidly and uncontrollably. The latter were placed in stasis pending possible cures. The ranks of the Thousand Suns thinned, causing concern. Rumors began that the Legion should be disbanded and erased from the history of the Imperium. Meanwhile, the Great Crusade continued. The Emperor's forces reached the planet of Prospero, where they discovered Magnus the Red, the Primarch destined to lead the Thousand Suns Legion. Taking the helm of the 15th Legion, whose Space Marines were created from his gene seed, Magnus acted swiftly to save his progeny. Almost all had undergone the flesh change. Through some mysterious, unknown process, Magnus stabilized the gene seed, but by that time the number of Thousand Suns was indeed small. Under Magnus's leadership, the Thousand Suns rebuilt their legion, reorganized their ranks, and recruited new battle brothers from the population of Prospero. They created the most powerful librarians of the era and developed unconventional tactics, incorporating sorcery and diplomatic maneuvers. This culminated in the Council of Nicaea, and the Emperor's decree prohibiting the use of sorcery and other psychic powers within the Imperium and among the Space Marine legions, leading to tragic and horrific events that saw the Thousand Suns turn against the Imperium forever. When the Horus heresy began, the Primarch of the Thousand Suns, Magnus the Red, attempted to warn the Emperor. He resorted to sorcery to cross the interstellar void between the homeworld of the Thousand Suns and Terra. However, the Emperor rejected the magical warning, declaring that the forces of chaos sought to deceive him against his favored son Horus. He dispatched Primarch Liman Russ and his legion of space wolves to bring Magnus to Terra for trial for violating the edicts of the Council of Nicaea and the use of sorcery. Horus maliciously altered the contents of the order. Instead, Russ and the space wolves attacked the Brother Legion, prompting the Thousand Suns to turn to chaos for the salvation of their lives. The result of the brutal campaign, known in history as the Burning of Prospero, The homeworld of the 15th Legion perished in flames. Some of the Thousand Sons, along with Magnus, managed to escape thanks to Tzeentch, their new patron. Becoming traitor space marines, they joined Horus and his forces in their failed attempt to overthrow the Emperor, to avenge all that they lost along with Prospero. Henceforth, the Thousand Sons were forever bound to the Changer of Ways and used their powers to strive for knowledge and glory for themselves and their patron. Embracing Tzeentch, the Thousand Sons continued to develop their combat doctrine around deception and subterfuge, preferring sorcery and ranged strikes to close combat. They changed the colors of their legions to blue and gold and crowned their helmets with fanciful crests. The flesh changes, which were curbed by Magnus's intervention, began to spread again under the influence of warp power in the Eye of Terror, where they found refuge on a demon world known as the Planet of the Sorcerers. Many of Magnus's sons changed beyond recognition. Machinations of Ahriman, the chief librarian of the Thousand Sons and right hand of Magnus, spawned a monstrous spell known as the Rubric of Ahriman, which forever resolved the problem. The Rubric of Ahriman reversed the mutations of all brothers skilled in sorcery, but forever turned the others devoid of psychic abilities into dust. Their souls were forever encased in power armor, turning them into rubric marines. Those of the Thousand Sons who were gifted psychically discovered their abilities were significantly enhanced. Now they lead their ghostly battle brothers to war against the Imperium of Man and the Corpse Emperor, whom they believe betrayed them. Learning of the rubric's failure, Magnus exiled Ahriman. This was the first of many schisms that divided the Legion of the Thousand Sons into factions, ultimately causing estrangement from their own Primarch. As a result of internal discord, the Thousand Sons effectively ceased to function as a legion. They continue to fight, but now as isolated squads and individual warriors. Some of them serve Tzeentch faithfully and devotedly, others reluctantly, and still others are conduits of destructive sorcerous power from the warp, unaware of it. A passage from the works of the Chaos sorcerer Ahriman explains much about the significance of Tzeentch's sacred number. Ahriman writes, 9 is the number most sacred to the Changer of Ways. Only after the 9th rune has been drawn will the scroll of change begin to glow, obtaining its true essence. There are 9 dissimilar rituals that an acolyte must perform before he can unveil the secrets that will allow him to pierce through the veil, a process that will grant the worthy access to the boundless energy of the Immaterium. To ensure the process is not interrupted, the summoning symbol must contain 9 consecutive circles, each of which must be repeated 9 times with impeccable precision. 9 is the number of the cultist hymns of Kairos, and a coven of 9 sorcerers is, without a doubt, the most powerful of groupings. However, it is not only the rights of mortals that abide by the rules of the great sorcerer. The number 9 can be found interwoven in the unfathomable and constantly shifting structures of the realm of the Architect of Fate in the Warp. Lords of Change, the greatest servants of Tzeentch, and commanders of his assemblies receive orders within 9 levels of trust. All seek the favor of their ruler, and those at the pinnacle of power command 9 fractal fortresses. Under the command of these supreme overlords are 999 legions, each divided into 9 hosts. It is said that when a demon is slain, its immortal spirit appears in the impossible fortress and is presented to its creator after passing through one of the 9 ever-changing gates. Here the demon will either be reborn or consumed by the will of Tzeentch. Typically, the Changer of Ways stands against Nurgle, the Lord of Plagues, just as Slanesh, the Prince of Perverse Pleasures and Excesses, opposes Khorne, the God of Blood and Skulls. If Nurgle represents chaos as entropy, then Tzeentch is the energy of perpetual change. Where Nurgle facilitates decay, atrophy and destruction, Tzeentch fosters growth and development. For many scholars of malevolent forces, the speculative description of the Changer of Ways becomes more meaningful when contrasted with Tzeentch and Nurgle. There is no end to the instances when Tzeentch's cunning plans were thwarted by the hostile influence of Nurgle. The demonic and mortal servants of both chaos gods clash with each other as often as with their common enemies, the defenders of the Imperium. However, Despite the rivalry between Tzeentch and Grandfather Nurgle, both are gods of chaos and exert the greatest influence over other malevolent forces. From time to time, the gods of chaos are compelled to unite and act together for the fulfillment of each of their plans. And it is Tzeentch who is behind every pact in these rare alliances within chaos. Nevertheless, Tzeentch never acts out of altruism. There is no doubt whenever he helps the forces of chaos to unite, he ultimately pursues his own inscrutable to others goals. Just as Tzeentch manifests and appears in various forms, many of which are fluid and changeable, so too does the dominion of the Changer of Ways in the realm of chaos constantly adapt to the whims, desires, moods of its master, and of course the objectives of 1001 of his plots. Humans, Xenos and Daemons perceive this territory and interpret what they perceive in the most various ways. The few scholars and direct witnesses who have survived a stay in the realm of Tzeentch and retained the ability to coherently narrate their impression consider that neither mortal nor demon, except perhaps the most powerful lords of change, are capable of grasping the true nature of Tzeentch's changeable realm. Most who enter the domain of the great conspirator soon go mad. Those with an exceptionally resilient consciousness and strong will might yet interpret any of the components of the transparent, crystal-like landscape possessing thousands of forms, just as Tzeentch himself does. Many believe that the mind can perceive this world of warp energy transformed into something resembling a solid form through symbols or metaphors, images created by the human mind in an attempt to comprehend the essence of pure chaos and incessant change. In fact, many commentators rely on paradoxical metaphors even to describe the perception processes of the realm of Tzeentch itself. A sculpture from mist, images from dreams, silent song, drawings with fog, and so forth. The great ocean of warp is an endless sea of madness and insanity, and the realm of Tzeentch, concentrated essence of such things, having taken on a semblance of form. Despite the constantly changing nature of the architect of fates and the inability of the limited minds of mortals to perceive and understand it from the descriptions of the domains of Tzeentch, one can distill something common. Some observers claim that the core of the landscape consists of a huge crystal labyrinth, whose shining surfaces shimmer with all the colors of the rainbow like polished opal. The passages in this labyrinth appear, dissolve, merge, separate and change direction seemingly at random. Only the Lords of Change, the most powerful servants of Tzeentch, and those who are capable of a sufficiently clear understanding of unlimited madness, can hope to grasp the design that governs the mad labyrinth and navigate its corridors. No demons guard the realm of Tzeentch, for the labyrinth itself provides sufficient protection against any rash and reckless assault on the great schemer. Gazing into the depths of the crystalline substance that forms this labyrinth, one beholds more than merely light, reflected and refracted on the shimmering facets of its surfaces. There, flickering within sight, are fears, sorrow and hope, manifested visually, whimsical and nightmarish dreams, stories both real and imagined, visions of possible futures, depictions of torment, ecstasy and despair. Abstract thoughts momentarily transform into tangible images, yet they mimic the appearance of a drawing within the crystal's depth. One seer reports seeing visions of his children at various moments of their lives, all intertwined with despair, sadness and grief. Another speaks of experiencing rapture and ecstasy within the realm of Tzeentch upon witnessing visions of a possible future, each promising far greater joy and success than her past had ever held. A third claimed to have beheld nightmarish images on the mirror surface of the labyrinth. Demons tore apart the flesh of his friends and loved ones, dark sorcerers wielding the flames of the warp laid waste to his home. But worst of all were the transformations of his own body into a writhing mass of tentacles. When he finally managed to tear his gaze away from the hellish visions, he discovered that many days had passed, and his body had indeed transformed into the grotesque spawn of chaos that he had envisioned himself becoming. According to Imperial archives, the end for all three was tragic. The first took his own life, the second lost her mind, while the third was executed by the Inquisition. In some sense, these survivors in the realm of Tzeentch were fortunate. Rumors persist that the majority of those who traverse the labyrinth of the Raven God wander through it perpetually, transformed into pitiful and mad husks of their former selves, forever tormented by horrific visions, mourning their mistakes, missed opportunities, and hopes for a tomorrow they will never realize. It is known that the flow of time within the warp is subject to fluctuations, starkly differing from its consistent linear progression in the four-dimensional space-time of the material world. This discrepancy is all the more pronounced in the domains of Tzeentch. As illustrated by the above case, mere minutes spent studying the crystal labyrinth could correspond to days or even years in reality. Suppose two individuals enter the realm of Tzeentch simultaneously. One might emerge within moments, reporting years spent there, while the other leaves the labyrinth centuries in real time later, yet could swear they were absent from the real world for only a few minutes. Such paradoxes of subjective time perception are encountered even in the very abode of Tzeentch itself. It seems that hours are needed just to complete a single step. Seconds spent admiring the delightful play of light within the crystal structure can stretch out over several days. Many lords who saw something breathtaking and paused for a moment died of dehydration or starvation. Meanwhile, others have wandered the mad corridors of Tzeentch's labyrinth for years without water, food, or rest. It is possible that the influence of chaos slows their metabolism. Legends tell of a being known as the Keeper of the Labyrinth, who resides within its crystal passages. His name suggests a role of protector, yet he appears more frequently as a gatekeeper and observer. Rumors suggest that there exists a path through the realm of Tzeentch, one that theoretically could be traversed by anyone, mortal or demon, and on this path infinite knowledge shall be revealed. To embark upon this path, the inquisitive pilgrim must pass through the 9 gates. These portals, thrice the height of a man, resemble golden arches entwined with blue-pink tongues of warp flame. Whether due to the power of the Keeper of the Labyrinth or the strange nature of time flow within the realm of Tzeentch, with its swirls and intertwining, the Keeper manifests as a gigantic bodiless Maw, hovering above all 9 gates simultaneously. At each gate, this Maw loudly addresses the Seeker, offering to solve one of the 999 riddles of Zaratzoth. Those who answer correctly may proceed through the gate and continue their journey towards higher enlightenment. Those who fail are doomed to wander the labyrinth for eternity in the embrace of madness and lament over the infinite knowledge they could have attained. According to legends, only one person throughout history has correctly answered all 9 questions. Intriguingly, in many versions of this story, the Seeker appears in the form of a young girl, accompanied by a small black dog. Factions within the Ordo Malleus engage in fierce academic debates over the hidden meaning of this story, questioning whether it truly occurred, and if it was not another instance of the Master of Lies casting dust into the eyes of naive mortals. It is said that Tzeentch's Sanctum Sanctorum, the impossible fortress, lies at the center of the crystal labyrinth, if such definitions as center can be applied in any measure to this ever-changing place. Some believe it might rather refer to a central idea or whimsical image, reachable more through a series of contemplations than conventional movement through space. In some ways this is true. Nothing in this realm possesses physicality as mortals understand it. Though this ethereal structure is in constant flux, many describe it as a crystal castle, made of the same material as the labyrinth that surrounds it. From the impossible fortress's ever-changing foundation spontaneously rise spires, balancing inconceivably, and towers of blue and pink warp flame. Gates, doors and portals slowly open as if yawning from the envy of ages, only to snap shut like the maws of terrible beasts and disappear. Mortals, shackled by psychological cuffs created throughout a lifetime of habits and cultural traditions of the material world, cannot grasp the perverse design of Tzeentch's abode. Indeed, no architect of the material realm, no matter how bold and daring their imagination, could have conceived such a lunatic project as that suggested by the name of this fortress. Only a few demons, aside from the most powerful lords of change, can navigate its corridors. And since these beings themselves are sources of the madness that constitutes the realm of Tzeentch, they flourish nonetheless. Deep within the impossible fortress, according to tales of some heretics, lies the legendary hidden library of Tzeentch as well. This is a collection of volumes, scrolls and parchments, innumerable in quantity and infinite in diversity. They contain, in fragments, all revelations and ideas ever conceived in the universe. Histories, both written and unwritten, true and alternate, reports of the future, potential, actual and imaginary. Many volumes are so saturated with knowledge that they acquire a sort of consciousness and spend centuries conversing with visitors, arguing among themselves, rewriting themselves and then rearranging their placement accordingly. Magical chains of warp flame help protect the books and anchor them in place. Horrors act as grotesque librarians, ceaselessly working to reassemble the folios, catalogue the collection and maintain order, such as it corresponds to the concept within the impossible fortress. Indeed, the very notion of order is anathema to the great schemer, and no mortal can comprehend such a scheme. Little of what is ever associated with the changer of ways remains as it seems. While the crystal labyrinth, the impossible fortress, and the hidden library often appear, or at least are perceived as described above, these descriptions sometimes wholly diverge from those presented by the unfortunate who have visited the domain of Tzeentch. At the onset of the 41st millennium, the god Samael, whom the princes of the Hive City, acting as his patrons, called the Mad Jester from Hamclov Prime, claimed to have travelled through the realm of Tzeentch and returned. Samael stated that he saw nothing but a cold hill upon which a lone leafless tree grew. Delas Dial, the heretic illuminator of Fallen 10, later executed for heresy, described the realm of Tzeentch as a barren desert landscape, populated by deformed, headless humanoids whose bodies were constantly decaying and transforming into something new. Other witnesses depicted the domain of the deceiver as pulsating protoplasm, constantly assuming new forms, towers of mushrooms and mold, continents formed by sentient vegetation and vines of endless length, endless territories where there was nothing but barren stone and ash. It is quite possible that the realm of Tzeentch is each of these things and much more. Observers have been known to subjectively interpret the domain of Tzeentch, filtering the perception of warp's structured energy through their own expectations and experience. However, it is more likely that Tzeentch himself, in accordance with his needs, whims and plans, determines how a mortal or demon perceives his realm. Like all of the dark gods, Tzeentch commands a vast array of minions of various types, from demons created from the thickening of his will to mortals who serve his whims, whether they know it or not. They are merely puppets manipulated by the architect of fate. Only a few, if any, are able to even guess at the nature of the invisible threads that make them act. The demons of Tzeentch are entirely dissimilar to one another in terms of appearance, morphology, level of intellect, autonomy, and their role in their master's schemes. It can be confidently stated that the creatures of Tzeentch are more diverse than those subservient to other ruinous powers. Nonetheless, all of Tzeentch's demons share something in common. On one hand, demons are entities of the Sea of Souls, capable of residing in real space only temporarily and under strictly defined conditions, since the material world is not their natural habitat. A certain triggering event is required for a demon to overcome the barrier between the shifting, loose spheres of the immaterium and real space. They can be summoned into the material plane by a sorcerer or chaos cultist conducting an ancient forbidden ritual. When a psyker loses control over his abilities, it also allows demons to breach into reality. The barrier can be weakened by some horrific magical or psychic event. Despite the instability of their presence in the material universe, demons can be surprisingly resistant to most forms of physical damage. Poisons and pathogenic organisms do no harm to these warp entities. However, many types of force weapons, sacred relics, and psychic attacks can relatively easily damage them due to their psychic component and resonance in reality. Horrors are the most numerous of the lesser demons of Tzeentch, capable of unleashing powerful psychic pulses on their enemies. They are often used as slaves by the greater demons known as Lords of Change. Describing the demons called horrors is nearly impossible, as they have no fixed material bodies. They are pure, unrestrained chaos, and only the will of Tzeentch gives them form and fills them with energy. They can assume a discernible shape or dissolve into a furious multicolored mass, scattering and spreading across the battlefield. Nevertheless, horrors have two states determined by color, by which they can be recognized by the naked eye. Pink horrors are known for their glowing pink skin and piercing, cackling laugh. They whirl in a frenzied, almost uncontrollable ecstasy, constantly giggling madly over their own jokes, incomprehensible to anyone else. These brightly colored throngs sweep across the battlefield with such swiftness that their outlines blur. When bright flashes of primal magic leap from their outstretched fingers, it seems as though the pink horrors are overcome with joy, and a sorcerous light show unfurls above them in the air. The clumps of energy emitted by the pink horrors have the property of engulfing their foes, turning into scorching flames of mutation, which brings the demons even greater delight. Though bitten or scratched by a horror, one would never remain the same. The primary weapon of these lesser demons of Tzeentch is not their sharp, curved claws, nor the fanged maw gaping at the center of their rubbery, viscous bodies. The principal weapon of these beasts is the unformed energy of the warp that flows within them. Uttering a word or phrase of incantation in a guttural chant, the horror sends balls of multicolored flame at the enemy. Upon striking, they do not simply burn, but cause gruesome and monstrous transformations. Foes are turned into statues of screaming glass, swarms of butterflies forming twisted faces of human agony, sounds of the mad music of crying infants, or terrible clusters of tentacles. Only Tzeentch knows the fate awaiting those touched by the flames of the warp. As for the horrors themselves, they pay it no heed, reveling in every change. The only way to stop the exultation of a pink horror is to tear it to pieces or otherwise dismember it. When wounded, it lets out a final, spasmodic laugh and immediately curls up into a spinning ball of ectoplasm. Then, a content cry, unmistakable for anything else, is heard as the mass changes color and splits into two halves, miniature copies of the original. These demons, the blue horrors, differ from their predecessor in two respects. Firstly, their color shifts from pink to bright blue, hence their name blue horror. Secondly, the character of the pink horror becomes wholly opposite. The blue horrors are sullen, whiny and aggressive, like spiteful children. Their faces are twisted in morose grimaces, and during battle they continuously grumble, showering the enemy with insulting jibes. They're ready to endlessly argue over whose fault it is they've lost their pink hue again. Once born, the blue horrors quickly reunite with their companions, adding notes of low whining to the ceaseless giggling. They feel so miserable and oppressed that in a rage they throw themselves at those who ruined their day, wishing to beat and strangle the offender if only he lacks the courage to attack the demonic creature first. If a blue horror is killed before it can exact revenge, it splits again into two tiny brimstone horrors, blazing with yellow clumps of pure spite and bitterness, driven by the desire to incinerate each of their foes. Named after a substance so foul that even demons find it repulsive, the brimstone horrors appear bright and whimsical, yet they are malicious and vengeful. These tiny warp creatures understand that glory, power and prestige will forever remain beyond their reach. To make themselves feel better, they burn everything they encounter, hurling magical flames at their targets and quickly surrounding those who try to extinguish or fend it off. Joining hands, the brimstone horrors chant mocking verses as their victims transform into pillars of fire. The blue scribes, also known as the Azure Archanologists, the Wandering Wizardkin, and the Tzeentch's Questers, are a pair of blue horrors named Ptarix and Ziratup. The Changer of Ways created them to travel across the dimensions of reality in order to find and record all known spells and snippets of forbidden knowledge. Ptarix and Ziratup strive to recover each one, as they contain the essence of power that Tzeentch lost many millennia ago, when he was the greatest of the dark gods. If the blue scribes ever succeed in their endeavor, Tzeentch might reclaim his position as the most powerful entity in the cosmos. Each spell contains a lost fragment, through which Tzeentch hopes to regain an overwhelming advantage in the great game against the other chaos gods, as well as dominion over all existence. Each of the scribes flies on their own disk across the realms of mortals and demons, binding their deities' lost fragments with parchment and ink. Tzeentch endowed the scribes with enhanced intellect, but also implemented a safeguard against betrayal. Ptahryx can transcribe the words of magical spells into chaos runes and glyphs, yet cannot read his own writings. Zheerat can decipher the scribbles of his brother, but cannot understand them. Consequently, Zheerat is able to utter spells by reading Ptahryx's records, but cannot predict what the spell will be. Thus, the blue scribes unleash utterly unpredictable psychic attacks on those who threaten them, sowing chaos in battle. There was a time when Tzeentch ruled over the warp, and his power far exceeded that of any of his brothers. At least, according to his followers. In their envy and pride, the dark gods set aside their differences and joined forces to overthrow the architect of fate. The ensuing catastrophic conflict devastated territories too vast to conceive. In the final battle, when defeat seemed inevitable, Tzeentch cast a great spell, crystallizing his thoughts and body. As he was hauled to the peak of one of the infinite mountains and thrown from there, upon impact, his essence shattered into 10,000 pieces. Each shard contained a tiny fragment of the great architect's essence, a single spell or word of change. They were scattered across all corners of space and time, so that Tzeentch's power was irrevocably weakened. In the legends of many intelligent races, this momentous event marked the beginning of the use of psychic sorcery in real space. Since their creation, the blue scribes have traveled through the warp, penetrating all times and the most remote corners of the galaxy in search of lost grimoires or experienced sorcerers who they could interrogate. Their wanderings often lead the blue scribes to the battlefields of real space. There, they invariably aid the side that enjoys Tzeentch's support, regardless of whether those who have been so favored are aware of it or not. Ptahryx uses the ability to study and catalogue the secrets of enemy psykers, while Zheerat unleashes a flurry of sorcery, reading the first scrolls they come across, which they have collected over millennia. Meanwhile, the twins incessantly bicker about which spell to use next. If an enemy gets close enough to strike them in melee combat, the blue horrors begin to blame each other for having allowed such a calamitous situation to occur, repelling attackers while irritably flapping at them with the same quills they use to inscribe their scrolls. In rare cases, they even manage to gain the upper hand over their opponent, and then the inevitable arguments over which of them showed more heroism begin. However, if the improvised weapons of the blue scribes prove to be ineffective, as usually happens, they flee on their disc in search of easier victories. For the mortal races of the galaxy, it is a true blessing that this pair almost constantly interrupts their searches to engage in such battles and to squabble with one another. Should they ever succeed, Tzeentch will regain his supremacy and once again gain dominion over the entire universe. A herald of Tzeentch is an elite form of the pink horror. Heralds lead the forces into battle across the galaxy. In the case of such magical beings as a demon of Tzeentch, strength directly depends on the knowledge of the great art of their master. The most cunning, sly and skilled pink horrors are selected by the Changer of Ways to command his demonic legions. Thanks to the grace of their lord, they achieve even greater heights in the secret knowledge and mastery of its use. Having ascended, the horrors radiate the mighty power of their master. They are capable of transforming both their halves, which are formed when a horror is dealt a mortal blow. Each of them is also granted a ritual dagger, a weapon enchanted to transfer the energy of a slain enemy to its bearer. Whether a herald moves among the hordes of lesser demons, races across the battlefield on a blazing chariot, or floats in the sky on a disc, each of them is a true connoisseur of how to spawn cunning illusions and plunge their opponents into a state where they are no longer able to think clearly. The most common type of herald is known as the Changecaster, named thus due to the mutating magic they wield. They're often seen within the ranks of the scintillating legion. They guide the packs of horrors like shepherds or drovers. Such work is necessary since the horrors are ready to flee at the most inopportune moment. Other heralds undertake tasks more mundane but less risky. For example, they guard sources of magical power or oversee repairs in the Crystal Labyrinth. Those heralds of Tzeentch, who usually through deceit manage to acquire a burning chariot, known as the Fate Skimmers. These demons race and dash across the battlefield, madly chuckling and showering enemies with curses before their whimsical contraptions crash into the enemy ranks. The most cautious heralds, those who do not lose control over themselves, do not delve into the thick of battle. They move in the rear rows of their troops, shouting orders amidst madness and fierce gunfight. There are several instances where fate skimmers led entire regiments of burning chariots into battle. The Changeling, a horror of Tzeentch, also known as Trickster of Tzeentch, whom the Master of Change in ancient times endowed with the ability to take the form of any creature. He can assume the shape of any beings, from the tiniest insects to the great demons with their colossal stature. No one, except perhaps Tzeentch himself, knows the true form of the Changeling, and it is possible that he himself no longer remembers it. However, he will never reveal this secret to keep his favorite pawn under control. Sometimes he is seen in a cloak with a hood. Rumors say that at these times the Changeling constantly changes, randomly taking the form of one or another creature from those he has ever copied, in vain hope of once again assuming his true form. The Changeling can copy not only the appearance of another creature, but also its habits and even personality traits so flawlessly that he is able to deceive even the dark gods. In the entire universe, there is only one entity that the Changeling cannot reproduce: the great god Tzeentch himself. The great schemer would not tolerate someone stealing his persona even for a moment. The trickster, known as the Changeling, orchestrates his mischief within the realm of chaos as well as in the material universe, sowing discord and strife wherever he roams, reveling in the distrust and confusion that proliferate due to his actions. He embodies the Master of Change's love for spreading turmoil and disbelief. The Changeling is a deceiver, a con artist who meddles in all affairs. Numerous rulers across the galaxy have made strange decisions that led to disasters, and then claimed they had never been at the location where such decision was made. On the battlefields, a great hero fought an opponent who was his mirror reflection, and comrades could not distinguish them until it was too late. Assuming the prestigious identity of Lord Commander Solar Macarius, the Changeling ordered the Imperial forces to retreat to Goran, while the real warlord commanded at the front. Disguised as a humble Gretchen, the Changeling made several modifications to Warboss Gitsmasher's favorite mega-shooter. This was only discovered when the Warboss fired, and the mega-shooter exploded, converting Gitsmasher and the knobs of his entourage into a pile of tiny green pieces. There was an instance when the Changeling transformed into a keeper of secrets and accepted the challenge of an Imperial commander whose massive palace was besieged by vengeful space marines from the Dark Angels chapter. The Changeling exchanged the souls of the desperate man's daughters for a powerful artifact, which, according to the cunning demon, would end the siege. No sooner had the commander activated the device than shadow duplicates of the Deathwing Terminators materialized around him. A whole squad. The Changeling's gift was a teleport Homer, stolen from the Ravenwing Space Marines. The siege indeed soon ended, and the Changeling entertained himself with the beautiful daughters of this man for a long time. Setting up pranks, the Changeling does not limit himself to the realm of mortals. Countless wars between the gods of chaos began because of the Changeling's jokes. For instance, once he trimmed the beautiful hair of Slanesh with a stolen infernal blade while the Dark Prince slept. Another time, the Changeling hid 3 Nurglings in the Throne of Skulls. When Khorne sat there, they released a foul stench and made a noise that caused a terrible disorder. The Changeling also played a part in orchestrating the events that led to the siege of the Fenris system in the year 999 of the 41st millennium. Assuming the guise, first of a Dark Angel scout and then Samael, the Grand Master of the Ravenwing, the Changeling convinced Supreme Grandmaster Azrael of the Dark Angels that the Space Wolves had undergone mutation, and they were responsible for attacks on Dark Angels targets across the galaxy. This spurred the Master to attack the Fenris system. Most often the Changeling engages in mischief on his own initiative. Only on rare occasions is Tzeentch directly guiding his trickster. Usually the great schemer simply enjoys watching his shenanigans. As the changeling weaves his ragtag tapestry of chaos and deceit, terrible wars and discord follow in his wake. He prefers to disappear long before the onset of hostilities, but when cornered, is fully capable of defending himself. Trapped, the shapeshifter, employing sorcery, tears attackers to shreds, and in close combat can take on the appearance of the enemy and literally beat the foe with their own weapon. The trickster led an army of demons in the battle for Neurades. On this world, their opponents, under the command of Harold, nicknamed the Death Wolf, became the Space Wolves, who arrived to cleanse the planet from cultists. Ultimately, the Space Wolves defeated the trickster when, in the most dramatic moment, the Wolfen came to aid his comrades. The Flamer, also known as the Parademons of Tzeentch, the keeper of the true flame of change, is one of Tzeentch's lesser demons. Flamers are among the strangest and most restless of Tzeentch's demons. Their physiology is so absurd that it defies the imagination of most mortals. A flamer's body consists of a cone-shaped torso without a head. Two long arms end in fingerless stumps, adorned with razor-sharp teeth, glittering tongues, and constantly spewing caustic sulfuric smoke. Despite their unnatural appearance and seemingly awkwardness, flamers are quite agile. Lacking legs, they move aloft, hopping through the air as if gravity has no hold on them, which looks quite frightening. This unusual mode of movement allows flamers to overcome small obstacles and even cross bodies of water without much effort. To the uninitiated observer, they might even appear amusing, but laughter soon turns to panic when the flamers suddenly start to approach. Moving with unexpected speed, the demons charge into attack. Multicolored flame gushes from their stumps and drips onto the ground, making these demons resemble living blowtorches. Of course, this is no mere fire, it's the raw material for magic and change. This is what mortals experience on their own worlds when confronted with the flame. The consequences of the fires are as unpredictable as they are destructive. The same can be said about the flame of change. The only difference is that it acts in the blink of an eye, causing victims to endure endlessly varied mutations. Magical energy can turn flesh into ice, metal into wood, and in an instant into crumbling chunks of stone, burning ash or molten wax. The warp flames crackles and hisses, and its droplets fall to the ground and take the form of tiny replicas of everything nearby. These tiny doppelgangers mock their originals in ways both funny and frightening. Flamers usually pay them no heed, but when the simulacra irritate them too much with their cries, the demons destroy them and start seeking a new victim. A flamer's victim may undergo thousands of transformations before the energy of the warp flame is depleted. Sometimes a flamer's attack does not affect the physical body, but corrupts the soul. It is known that psychic flame heals mortal wounds to the bewilderment of all, resurrecting those who are immersed in its iridescent glow. Such episodes inevitably provoke uncontrollable laughter, applause, and approving cries from all nearby pink horrors. The Parademons of Tzeentch, as they are sometimes called, are not endowed with a powerful intellect. The mind of the flamers is rudimentary, closer to instincts yet finely attuned to capture the thoughts of the greater demons of Tzeentch, who thus easily control the actions of their minions. Nevertheless, as long as the Lord of Change issues no commands, an exalted flamer or a herald of Tzeentch possessing an especially strong will may do what is in their nature, move across the battlefield, igniting everything in their path. Flamers can be found in various demonic armies of Tzeentch. In some, they form key formations, for example, in those forces that constitute the majority of the Conflagration Legion, which are part of the Scintillating Legion. Regardless of whether they are deployed as main or auxiliary units, they contribute with their dangerous ranged attacks and striking actions. Also, flamers are ideal for assaults on defensive positions. There are no fortifications that can protect against the rising clouds of magical flame. From their side, the Lords of Change always see flamers simply as cannon fodder and use them accordingly. Surrounded by brimstone horrors, an exalted flamer spews merciless flames of change, consuming the ranks of the enemy. Exalted flamers are a kind of champions. Every pore of their flesh, reminiscent of mushroom pulp, emits the energy of the warp and the magic of change. They are much more capable of independent thought than their lesser kin, and often lead other flamers or horrors into battle. The flame of Tzeentch, emitted by these beings, is more powerful and varied in manifestation than that of regular flamers. It comes in two varieties and varies in color according to its characteristics: singular bursts of blue color, possessing greater range and force of impact, and pink clusters that can affect a wider area and kill more enemies at once. Should any of the enemies survive these ranged attacks and approach, the exalted flamer will attempt to bite them. The flamer's mouth is surrounded by a ring of flame, and from it protrudes a long, fiery tongue. Some exalted flamers enter battle on blazing chariots, disc-shaped vehicles pulled by a pair of swiftly flying screamers. Aboard this soaring device, the exalted flamer pours a rain of warp fire, covering the battlefield with a conflagration of change. Such demons tend to dominate those who are beneath them and stage an enthralling fiery performance, racing across the sky. Screamers, often called Screamer of Tzeentch or Sky Shark, are demonic entities of Tzeentch. They resemble mythical lampreys or rays that once inhabited the oceans of ancient terror. The manner in which these demons remain airborne remains an enigma, and they can move with equal ease and speed through the atmosphere of planets, the void of space, and the immaterium. Some suggest that they do so by harnessing the energy of the warp, rather than flying through air or swimming in water. In flight, screamers leave trails of multicolored sparks and emit a piercing high-frequency howl, which has earned these creatures their name. The few who have fought these beings and survived tell tales of the scream of the sky sharks affecting the psyche of their victims, causing severe disorientation. They glide through the sky of the warp in predatory packs, in constant search of souls to deliver to their master. The screamers soar on magical winds like birds upon the breeze. They lack consciousness as such, driven by a powerful hunting instinct. Within the realm of chaos, screamers race across the waves of magic, hunting the shadow souls of mortal beings, solitary furies of chaos, and other unfortunate magical ephemera. Barely detecting the scent of a mortal's shadow entity, packs of screamers mercilessly pursue it across the countless immaterial planes that make up the realm of chaos. Catching their doomed prey, the screamers tear it to pieces in the blink of an eye. Shreds of its soul will be presented as a gift to Tzeentch. Screamers are highly agile due to their ability to fly and possess a wild yet cunning temperament. Although they can use magical attacks, their main weapon is the so-called warp jaws, which allow them to crush all types of solid matter, even the armored plating of a warship. In battle, few can withstand their jaws and dodge their wings. Numerous packs of screamers can often be encountered beyond the domains of Tzeentch, where they hunt for spacecraft traversing the warp. Like all demons, the only real obstacle they face when attempting to attack man-made vehicles residing in space is the Geller fields, which they systematically probe for weaknesses. However, even these do not guarantee safety. There have been instances where screamers have slipped through the Geller field when ships drifted in the warp, breached the hull, and allowed the energy of chaos to flood the ship. As those inside writhe and suffocate, their bodies mutate, squeezing the life out of them. Then the screamers enter to devour the unfortunate in their final moments of existence. Manifesting in the material world, screamers hunt with a cunning that belies their relatively low intellect. Flying through the sky and leaving behind glittering multicolored trails, screamers usually keep to great heights. From this advantageous position, they scout for victims worthy of their lord. Spotting suitable prey, screamers dive from the heights, unleashing unnatural arcs of warp lightning. Anything that stands after their first devastating attack is grabbed by the teeth and either devoured mid-flight or dropped from a height, so the victim shatters upon the ground. Since screamers lack intelligence, they are often employed as scouts and shooters by more powerful demons or ambitious sorcerers. However, should their control weaken, the screamers revert to their instinctual behavior and may tear apart their former master. The packs of screamers are drawn to battles in the material realm, where panic and disarray hang in the air. Sorcerers of the Thousand Suns Legion hasten the arrival of demons through rituals, opening direct portals to the screamers' usual feeding grounds. Thus these repugnant beasts assault reality, ignoring the laws of gravity and atmospheric conditions that might hinder other flying creatures. As screamers fly over the battlefield, their whip-like tails descend to pierce those below with sharp barbs. Those not bisected or disemboweled by these attacks find their wounds weakening them, physically and spiritually, marking them for the screamers, who return to devour them later. Occasionally, Tzeentch rewards one of his champions or demonic heralds with a screamer, which he may use as a mount in battle. However, before it can be used thus, the Changer of Ways must transform the demon into a mount known as a Disc of Tzeentch. Tzeentch turns the screamer into a disc, using a series of powerful rituals and magical ceremonies, and binds it with bands and chains of forged gold and silver. Sometimes the great architect decides to equip the disc with eyes, outfit it with magical blades made of living metal, or add tentacles, feathers, scales, or bone plates. Thanks to this transformation, the wild hunter becomes subject to the will of its rider. Consequently, the champion or demonic herald can utilize the screamer's speed and its ability to fly, as well as leverage the psychically tuned senses of their disc, its lightning-fast attacks, and the psychological impact of its madness-inducing scream for their own ends. The Burning Chariot of Tzeentch is a demonic construction serving the Changer of Ways. It consists of intricately decorated discs of Tzeentch and is drawn by screamers. When the burning chariot soars through the skies of mortal worlds, their inhabitants often mistake it for a comet, which in ancient times was considered an omen of dire calamities. The burning chariots of Tzeentch cross the realm of chaos like fiery meteors, delivering the chosen emissaries of the great sorcerer to all corners of the world. Usually these are exalted flamers, far more capable in the art of magical flame than their lesser kin. They can summon a vast rising veil of warp energy or send spells of magical transformation that, passing through the air, make it hiss. The discs and screamers making up the whimsical chariot are drawn to raw magic, like moths to a flame, and therefore to the exalted flamers, from every pore and fold of whose glittering flesh oozes delicious sorcery. At times, a burning chariot is accompanied by a group of sullen blue horrors, always ready to join anyone except for the irksome, cheerful pink horrors. For them, the blazing chariots are an excellent means to pour out their gloomy moods onto anyone who crosses their path. Some they curse and insult, while others they simply smother. More unusual in the ranks of these peculiar flying chariots are those belonging to the heralds of Tzeentch. Typically, the heralds acquire them through deceit. Most lack the patience to train screamers, yet they believe that to borrow a chariot from an exalted flamer is an act fully befitting their lofty position within the demonic pantheon. However, such a feat requires great cunning from the herald, lest they wish to experience the wrath of the theft's victim. Indeed, many heralds bear scars from such confrontations for eternity. The most cunning amongst them create complex protective spells, which alert them when the owner attempts to reclaim their property. As such, an eventuality is inevitable. The Lord of Change, also called the Supreme Mutator, one of the eyes of Tzeentch, the greater demon of Tzeentch, known for his trickery, a god of chaos embodying change and sorcery. Lords of Change beings resembling the offspring of unimaginable nightmares, massive bird-like demons with shimmering skin, predatory curved beaks and multicolored feathers, shimmering with all the colors of the rainbow. Those who gaze upon this perverted refraction of pure magic begin to feel their sanity slipping away like flakes of mist, and understanding eludes them. In the face of this incarnation of change, beliefs that formed the very foundation crumble and distort, and reason desperately seeks solid ground. Treachery, deceit and caprice, these are the hallmarks of the Lords of Change. The greatest servants of Tzeentch weave conspiracy after conspiracy, a dense web of their threads piercing eternity, so entangled that no one can comprehend their true purpose. An encounter with the Lord of Change can happen anywhere, any time this being desires. Few have managed to challenge it. The Changer of Ways is the master of fate itself, and his greatest servants possess a portion of this power. Sorcery, deceit, and the pursuit of knowledge bring Tzeentch particular delight. The embodiment of all this are his great demons, the Lords of Change. They are the prime agents of the Architect of Fate, and the most powerful of his demonic minions. However, they possess only a small fraction of their master's immeasurable wisdom. And even they are but will-less pawns in the great and unfathomable plan of Tzeentch, a plot of endless complexity that unfolds at the end of time. The appearance of the Lord of Change is as wondrous as it is terrifying, a constantly changing, multicolored form that challenges the minds of mortals and their logic. But the most memorable aspect of its appearance is the eyes. In their unfathomable depths, the paradoxical wisdom of Tzeentch hides, and none can withstand the piercing scrutiny of the gaze of the Lord of Change without losing their sanity. It is said that when the Lord of Change looks upon a person, that individual's soul unfolds like a book, revealing their hopes and dreams, as well as the truth of their ultimate failure or success. The greater demon of Tzeentch is driven by the necessity to redirect the predictable course of history itself and steer it onto a new, unexpected path. The Lord of Change relishes in tearing down ambitious hopes to their foundations and elevating the base-born and destitute to the pinnacles of power. The Lord of Change is blessed with a multifaceted, cunning and brilliant mind, as well as a profound understanding of the causality that propels the galaxy along its well-trodden track. The great mutator takes pleasure in destroying the established order to remake everything anew and direct it onto another path, and then to change everything once again. His minions move throughout all of real space, performing any task he sets them to. Assassinating a minor mortal, whispering the needed thoughts to a commander, stealing a worthless artifact, and thousands of other seemingly unrelated deeds which are mistakenly deemed coincidental. Each becomes a part of the great demon's devious plan and advances his intricate conspiracies. The Lords of Change, as they are known, typically act from behind the scenes, pulling the strings and manipulating others from the shadows like puppets. These manipulations are so subtle and so skillful that oftentimes the Lord of Change playthings remain unaware that they are ensnared by the demon. Secret cults of chaos, heretics, revolutionaries, and even imperial planetary governors frequently fall under the sway of the great mutator. Even the most stalwart adversaries of Tzeentch can be used to achieve the objectives of the great deceiver. Under the watchful governance of his most powerful demons, brother can be pitted against brother, and the most fervent of inquisitors can stray from the righteous path. To stand against the Lord of Change is to wander in fog, never experiencing certainty in one's actions. In one false step lies liberation. On the rare occasion when someone manages to defeat the Lord of Change and foil his plans, then he will fight like a beast trapped in a corner, using his incredible magical abilities to destroy his enemies right where they have experienced failure, deceit, and conspiracy. The Lords of Change are the greatest sorcerers of chaos in the galaxy. Their mastery of magic is unrivaled. The most powerful spells used by human psykers and sorcerers are but empty noise compared to theirs. The greater demons of Tzeentch is a being made of undiluted warp energy, capable of shaking worlds with but a touch. With the slightest motion of its elegantly tapered claw, the bodies of mortals mutate and contort. Buildings twist and melt away, while from the tumultuous flesh rivers spring forth creatures that seem incarnations of madness and horror. None of his actions can be undone. Nothing that has been created can be unmade. Those who wish to triumph over the Lord of Change must possess faith and beliefs more solid than the laws governing the life and motion of the stars. The air fills with kaleidoscopic bursts of magical energy as the forces, summoned by the great schemer, materialize to engage in battle. The gaze of a mortal is incapable of discerning which of Tzeentch's demonic legions is mounting the attack, but not because they are identical, but due to their bizarre appearances. In madness, there is a pattern, though none but the Architect of Fate himself can fully understand it. Surely Tzeentch prefers to achieve his ends through magic or intrigue, but sometimes the best alternative is the application of force. Then he unfolds his legions of demons, an army unlike anything that can be seen in real space. Their actions in war are a mesmerizing magical carnival of violence, freezing onlookers in astonishment. They annihilate their enemies with magical flame and the sorcery of change. Unlike the battle cohorts of Khorne or the cyclically changing troops that serve Nurgle, Tzeentch's legions are in constant flux, instantly adjusting their composition and tactics to serve their master's objectives. Each of the gleaming legions is commanded by one of the great Daemons, the Lord of Change, each infinitely devoted to their master's cause. The Lords of Change are granted significant autonomy. They command through counselors and champions. Each legion has its unique characteristics. Those who prefer to bask in the rays of destruction choose the Conflagration Legion, whose core is made up of flamers capable of expelling the most powerful impulses of warp flame. Others prefer the legions of Anarchus, which are much less predictable in composition and specialize in sudden and completely unexpected attacks. Those great demons who are masters of duplicity lead one of the Veiled Legions, the most mysterious in Tzeentch's forces. They seldom reveal their appearance and almost never engage in battle, and upon completing their design, they discreetly vanish. Each of Tzeentch's demonic legions is divided into 9 hosts, and these are directed in battle by demon princes and heralds such as Changecasters, Fluxmasters and Fateskimmers. The leaders of the hosts vie to earn the Changer of Ways praise, and even among the legions, intrigues are continuously woven as rivals set each other up and disrupt the plans of those battling at their side. This is yet another game within the great game. It pleases the great schemer who weighs the tribute each pays him and renders his judgment. Symbols of each demonic legion, sparkling, move in a dance through the pyramid of Urk in the depths of the crystal labyrinth, establishing a new order in accordance with the rewards received. This hierarchy is continuously restructured, yet each of the 9 most favored demonic legions gains control over one of the fractal fortresses, which loom over the crystal labyrinth. A honor sought by all servants of Tzeentch. Tzeentch is the Changer of Ways, the god of sorcery and intrigues. Among all the chaos gods, he perhaps most directly embodies the essence of chaos itself. Whether you wish it or not, he knows that you are his most successful instrument. Your vanity, your ambitions, and your human nature.